In this particular problem, we are being asked to determine the difference quotient. Now, with this difference quotient, I'm going to break it up into 3 steps. So step 1 is I'm just going to start out and I am going to evaluate my function, in this case function f, using the expression x plus h. So I'm only going to do that first part. And so as you'll recall from another video, or if you didn't watch that video, what I do first is I take whatever function they've given me, and anywhere I have an x, I'm going to put parentheses in place of that x. It just makes it easier to go back and plug in. So there's my original function. Whatever they have listed in parentheses here, I'm going to plug into all of the parentheses here. And then I have to simplify it. So that's where the work is really going to come in this case. So I've got a -7. When I do x plus h squared, remember you've got to take x plus h times x plus h. You can't just distribute the squared power. And then I'll come back in just a minute and we'll take -6 times x plus h. And then of course we'll have -6. So let me go ahead and FOIL at this point. So first terms, x times x would give me x squared. O for outside, x times h would give me xh. I for inside, h times x would give me xh. And L for last, h times h is h squared. And then I'll come back and do this other distributing in just a minute. Okay, so now at this point, I'm going to go ahead and distribute the -7. So we get a -7x squared. And then we have a -7xh. And then we have another -7xh. And then finally, we have a -7h squared. Now I have to distribute the -6. So that becomes a -6x. And then a -6h. And then finally, I have that -6. So if you have any like terms, go ahead and combine them. So -7x squared is all by itself, but these two terms are alike. So when I combine them, I get -14xh. And then everything else is just a single term that can't be combined with others. So that step 1, especially if you have a quadratic, is always going to lead to a bunch of terms. Now, when I look up here for step 2, notice the next part says I'm going to subtract the original function. So step 2, I'm going to take the answer that I got from step 1. So we can't just forget about it. So here's step 1, -7x squared minus 14xh minus 7h squared minus 6x minus 6h minus 6. And now, based on this formula, it says I'm going to subtract the original function. And I'm going to put my original function in parentheses because when it says subtract, that means all terms have to be subtracted. So my original function, which is right here, is -7x squared minus 6x minus 6. All right, so when we distribute that minus sign on the original function, so minus a -7x squared becomes positive 7x squared. And minus a -6x becomes positive 6x. And minus a -6 becomes positive 6. Now, if you have done things correctly at this particular step, all of your terms that came from the original function should cancel out. That's kind of how you know you're doing the difference quotient right. So notice I have a positive 7x squared, and that is actually, if I would have written it correctly here, that should be an x. That's going to cancel out with a -7x squared. So I had just written it wrong when I brought it down there. So that term is gone. And then I have a positive 6x. Well, that's going to cancel with the -6x. So that term is gone. And then finally I have a positive 6 that will cancel with the -6. So that term is also gone. So at this point, my leftovers are -14xh minus 7h squared minus 6h. And then finally, step 3, when I come up here to this formula, the final step says I'm going to divide the answer I just got by h. So the answer I just got, I'm going to divide it by h. Now, you tend to want to just mark out one of the h's on top with the h on bottom, but you can't do that. So what we do instead is, since all the terms on top have a h, we're going to factor it out. So that'll leave me with a negative 14x minus a 7h minus a 6. So all terms had a h that I factored out. And then that particular h, that can cancel with the one on bottom. So you can't just cancel a single h like here and here. You can factor it out and then cancel it. And so my final answer in this case for the difference quotient would be a negative 14x minus 7h minus 6.